The boarding pass tore like paper shame. "This seat isn't for you," the flight attendant hissed, her nails tapping the torn stub like punctuation. The cabin's air chilled. Just inside the first-class section of Flight 2841, a black woman in a slate-gray blazer stood still, the kind of stillness that made people uncomfortable. Her name was Dr. Noelle Bryant, but the cabin didn't know that. They only saw skin, a plain leather tote, and a boarding pass for seat 1A. "Ma'am, economy is that way," the blonde attendant said, her voice tight with artificial sugar. Behind her, a white woman in silk muttered, "I always book 1A. She must be lost." Noelle didn't move. She'd been here before, not just in planes, but in rooms she wasn't meant to enter. She remembered her first rejection letter from a graduate school she would later be invited to keynote. She remembered the smirk of a mentor who said, "Black girls like you don't lead tech." Today, she wore those memories like armor. And the cabin, it was about to become a courtroom. If you've ever been underestimated because of your skin, this story is for you. If you've ever watched someone get humiliated for simply standing in the wrong space, stay with us. This isn't just a story about racism on a plane. This is about power misunderstood, then exposed. This is racist exposed. Like, share and subscribe. Because stories like this, they don't just deserve to be told. They deserve to echo. 30 minutes later, that same flight would be grounded, the passengers would be stunned, and the woman they called a problem. She would be holding the key to the entire airline's future and their downfall. Let me take you back to minute 117 when a phone quietly started recording, and a storm began. The first-class cabin of Flight 2841 smelled of leather and chilled champagne. Cream-colored seats curved like gallery chairs, glowing under the soft golden light from the cabin ceiling. Then came the quiet steps of leather shoes. The toe of each shoe pressed into the wine-colored carpet, a rhythm unhurried, deliberate. Noelle Bryant, tall, elegant, her dark walnut-burnished skin glowing under the lights, a charcoal gray blazer with no logo, a simple leather tote, unbranded, no heavy makeup, no VIP tag, not a word spoken. And yet, she carried a silence that made others hesitate. Clara Maddox, the chief flight attendant, was arranging champagne at the front bar when she glanced over. A professional half-smile formed on her lips. "Good afternoon, ma'am," she said, her voice syrupy, her gaze gliding from Noelle's neatly braided hair down to her shoes, then pausing at the understated bag. A glance just 1.7 seconds long, enough to classify. "This is first class," Clara added, as if Noelle had just wandered backstage at a private fashion show. Noelle said nothing. She reached into her coat and held out her ticket. Seat 1A, window, with her name, a barcode, a confirmed stamp. She had nothing more to explain. But inside the cabin, the silence thin as glass began to tremble. A man in a navy suit squinted. A woman further back raised her phone, not yet recording, but aimed. The scent of quiet judgment spread like faint smoke in a fine dining restaurant. Clara blinked, then gave a small nod, the kind that doesn't quite concede. "There might be some kind of mix-up," she said, stepping back half a pace, as if hoping Noelle would simply walk away and let things correct themselves without anyone needing to name what this was. Noelle stood still, not angry, not fearful, just still like someone born to sit in that seat. She didn't need to make a scene. Her presence alone, in the wrong place, was already a statement. Clara Maddox straightened her shoulders, regaining the air of someone managing a photo shoot, not a cabin. She reached out, voice still smooth. "Would you mind letting me see your ticket again? The system might have assigned the wrong seat." Noelle handed it over again. Still 1A, still clearly printed Dr. Noelle Bryant, bold black ink. No ambiguity. Clara looked at it for 1 second. Then an emotion as sharp as scissors ripped the ticket in half, right in front of everyone. The sound of tearing paper cracked through the cabin dry. Sudden. Shreds of truth fluttered to the carpet like the body of a denied fact. Sorry, must have been a glitch, Clara said, colder now. Her eyes no longer met Noelle's. She looked instead toward the back, searching for silent approval from silent seats. Then came the unmistakable click of high heels. A white woman dressed in all white appeared, silk dress, limited edition LV handbag, perfume slicing through the air like an unspoken decree, I belong here. Sylvia Whitmore, platinum tier frequent flyer, her voice cut like shattered glass. Oh, seat 1A, that's always my seat. Someone's clearly in the wrong spot. Clara nodded like receiving an order. We'll sort this out right away, Miss Sylvia. Definitely just a misunderstanding. Sylvia offered a tight smile, her eyes scanning Noelle like a clearance item misplaced on the luxury shelf. Nothing personal, she said. But you understand, this cabin isn't really for people unfamiliar with first class. No one said a word, but complicity hardened into stares. Noelle inhaled slowly, not in anger, not in retreat. Just still like a shadow no one could shove aside. Clara stepped forward another half step, leaning in. Please return to your designated section. Our VIPs are getting uncomfortable. Still, no one asked Noelle who she was. They only knew she wasn't someone they knew. And that alone, to them, was reason enough to push her out. Clara's fingers tensed, her gaze iced over, but her tone strained to stay polite enough. Ma'am, I need you to return to economy. Otherwise, I'll have to call security. Sylvia stood off to the side, hand on hip, the posture of someone used to calling lawyers to knock people down a level. It's not about race or anything, she mumbled, loud enough for Rose to hear. Just, some seats aren't meant for everyone. A cough came from row 3, a phone camera raised, not recording yet, just watching. Noelle looked Clara in the eye, not soft, not sharp, just steady. Her voice, low and level, didn't rise or fall. I purchased this seat, 1A, paid, confirmed, assigned to my name. She bent slightly, picked up the torn ticket top, half still clearly showing her name. She held it up, not to Clara, not to Sylvia, but to the cabin. A middle-aged man nodded slowly, as if recognizing something for the first time. A young black passenger unlocked their phone camera. No words, but the air had changed. And I'm not going anywhere. Noelle's voice, each word poured over ice. Clara opened her mouth, but a small ding interrupted the intercom ping from the flight deck. Sylvia scoffed. You think standing still makes people obey you? That's a peculiar kind of confidence. Noelle turned to her, for the first time. Her gaze wasn't a blade, it wasn't a hammer. It was silence, the kind known only by those who have walked through fire and learned. Fire doesn't burn everyone. Sylvia swallowed barely, but the camera saw it. Noelle turned back, walked to seat 1A, sat, graceful. Correct. Placed her bag in the overhead bin, belted herself in. No one blocked her, no one touched her, but the whole cabin rippled. A storm was coming, but not from those who shout. From someone who chose to sit in the right seat and wasn't going anywhere. The air in first class thickened, not from cabin pressure, but from a silence too long unnamed. Noelle sat upright in seat 1A, eyes fixed on the window, but her mind wasn't there. She drifted back to a winter day in middle school. A 12-year-old black girl raised her hand to speak. The teacher, blonde hair, beige wool dress, glanced past her and pointed to the student next to her. She's spoken enough today. Let's hear from someone else. Another time, the interview room of the first tech company she applied to. Noelle wore a tailored gray suit. Her resume sat front and center, but their eyes landed on her braided hair, and the application corner marked Spelman University in black ink. Oh, that school. Interesting. Someone muttered. Another nodded. We're looking for someone who fits the company culture. What culture she knew. Everyone knew. No one said. Then there was the time at Houston Airport. Priority lane. Business class ticket. She stood ahead of a white couple, dressed more casually than her. The check-in agent asked bluntly, "Are you sure you're in the right line?" She remembered every detail, every word no one recorded, every polite gaze that stung more than a slap. Every time, Noelle chose not to get angry. Not because she was weak, but because she knew that black anger is never read as justified. She learned to stand still without being erased, to make her presence undeniable even when others tried to look away. So today, when her ticket was torn, when she was pressed to the edge of seat 1A like a system glitch, she wasn't surprised. Nothing here was new, just an old scene replayed again, this time with her in the lead. But what they didn't know, she wasn't a background character anymore. Seat 3C, a young black man, about 20, wore a gray hoodie and headphones draped around his neck. His phone rested on his thigh, camera quietly rolling. No light, no zoom, no commentary, just recording. His name was Jalen Reese. He didn't know Noelle, didn't fully grasp the scene playing out, but the look in her eyes when she sat down calm, deliberate, told him this was a moment. No one needed to narrate. Jalen knew this story. He'd seen it since childhood when his mom was followed around a grocery store, when his dad wore a suit to the bank, yet still got asked, "Where do you work? Is this your real account?" He saw it in videos of black women dragged from boardrooms for not registering, in clips of black students questioned by campus police just for napping in their own dorms. They all began the same look, a denial. Maybe you're in the wrong place. Then, the silent complicity of the entire room. Jalen knew this script. He'd watched it his whole life. But this time he held the camera. Not for clout, not to be an activist in comments, but because deep inside the part of him still burning from being called aggressive just for asking the right question, he knew some moments must be captured before they're erased. He panned slowly. Clara, the flight attendant, stood like a sentry. Sylvia, adjusting her hair, exuded the confidence of someone who believes their presence is unquestioned. Then the lens settled on Noelle. Not a word spoken. Just the image of a black woman, seated exactly where she belonged as if the seat had always been meant for her. But the system simply refused to remember. Jalen's thumb pressed record. He didn't know the full story, but something told him this is when things begin to break open. Near the back of the cabin, behind the curtain leading to the galley, a female crew member checked the onboard operations tablet. Neatly dressed, hair tied low, name badge slanted across her ID, Camilla Lee. Operations support. No one noticed her. She didn't stand in the aisle. She didn't speak up or wave her hands. Camilla was built to blend in to keep systems running without being seen. And that's exactly why she was chosen for this role. When Clara tore Noelle's ticket, Camilla had already glanced up from behind the curtain. Not shocked, just confirming it's happening. Just as predicted. Inside her uniform pocket was a secured tablet connected to the airline's internal server. The interface displayed real-time cabin feedback. Cabin cam active. Zone audio recording. Wrist device synced in. Bryant watch active. Camilla glanced at the screen. A small green dot blinked then turned orange. Signal sent. In seat 1A, Noelle gently tapped her watch. No one saw, but Camilla did, and she nodded, barely noticeable. But Noelle saw it too. A fleeting exchange of eyes, and it spoke louder than any word. "I'm here, it's begun, you're not alone." Inside Camilla's mind, systems began to run. Data quietly offloaded into secure memory. She had once been a systems engineer for a small tech firm before entering aviation and realizing the flaw wasn't in the code. It was in the people. Camilla wasn't Noelle's best friend, but they'd met 3 months ago, at a symposium on bias management and customer-facing service. They spoke for exactly 8 minutes. Just enough to understand if this ever happened, they'd need a signal, a glance, a nod, a touch to the watch. And now in this freezing cabin, among sarcasm and half-raised camera phones, the signal had been sent. The game had begun. The smartwatch on Noelle's left wrist buzzed 3 times. No one noticed. No one suspected a thing. It looked like just another health tracker or step counter. But to Noelle, it wasn't a watch. It was a key. She remained still in seat 1A, unmoving. But her fingers completed a simple sequence. Swipe. Hold. Double tap. No lights, no sound. But somewhere underground in the airline's technical operations center, a system registered the signal. It knew the sender wasn't a regular passenger. It recognized the user had emergency cabin access clearance. And the system came alive. Within seconds, the internal servers began storing every visual and audio recording from the first-class cabin from the moment Noelle boarded, to Clara's condescending tone, Sylvia's smirking laugh, the crisp sound of a torn ticket. All of it was archived, encrypted, and sent to 3 separate destinations. 1 internal records storage. 2. The independent legal oversight team. 3. A secured press address tracking racial discrimination within the airline industry. Noelle remained seated. No one knew what had just happened. But she did. Because she built the system. She knew when to stay silent and when to let the data speak. She lowered her hand to her thigh, back straight, eyes forward. No threat in her posture, no hint of resistance. But the machine she just triggered didn't need to threaten. It only needed the truth. And the truth was now replicating. A nearby passenger shifted in their seat, unaware they were now under recorded observation. A flight attendant adjusted her uniform, unaware her voice had just been logged. And Noelle. She simply sat in her rightful place. The rest had already been activated. Basement level. Airline headquarters. Technical control center. No windows. No loud voices. Only fluorescent lights and rows of humming servers. Haruto Kim, senior systems engineer, was reviewing diagnostics when a strange alert flashed on screen. No alarm. No blinking lights. Just a simple line. Emergency access device activated. User Noelle Bryant. Haruto's brow furrowed. A junior tech nearby leaned over and asked, "Who is she?" Haruto didn't take his eyes off the screen. "She's the one who helped us integrate the new cabin software last year." He paused, then added, "And the one who, if she issues a full flight audit, no one is allowed to override it." On the main console, the system processed image and audio feeds from the first-class cabin. Every word, every action since Noelle boarded was now being logged and copied across multiple systems. 1 copy went to the oversight division, 1 to the disaster recovery backup, and 1 was being encrypted for external release. Haruto wasn't surprised. He'd heard rumors about the silent mode protocol, a feature developed by Noelle's team, only used when serious bias or discrimination was observed in real time. He tilted his head and muttered, "She's activated it. She's monitoring this flight." The junior tech swallowed hard. "Can we block it?" Haruto shook his head. "No, she's not doing this alone." On the main screen, a new status appeared, monitoring active, priority high, processing emergency feed. No sirens, no panic. But inside the airline's digital backbone, a storm had begun. Clara Maddox walked toward the front of the cabin, adjusting her hair as she moved. The customer service smile had vanished from her face. Her voice into the crew intercom this time was no longer sweet. "We have a disruptive passenger in seat 1A, refusing to move, requesting immediate support." Each word delivered sharply designed to reframe the narrative from discrimination to disorderly conduct. Noelle heard every word, but she didn't react, didn't look up, didn't flinch. Her hand simply tightened around her bag strap, as if grounding herself in calm. Sylvia, dressed in white, scoffed audibly, "Unbelievable. First class is turning into public transport." Clara turned back, her tone now stripped of any pretense. "Ma'am, this is your final warning. If you do not vacate this seat, security will remove you from the plane." Noelle lifted her head, looked Clara in the eyes, held it for 3 seconds. No challenge, no surrender, just full presence. Her voice was even, low like wind passing over still water. "This is the seat I paid for. Confirmed? I'm not going anywhere." Clara glanced around and for the first time realized some passengers were watching her. Not Noelle. A man in row 2 mumbled, "She seems calm to me. What's the problem?" An older woman whispered to her companion, "They wouldn't be doing this if she were white." Clara bit her lip. She called in again. "Urgent. Passenger is uncooperative. Disrupting VIP comfort. Somewhere behind, a throat cleared. Phones continued recording. No flash, no noise, but the truth was being documented. Every second. And Noelle remained. Back straight, chin lifted, no yelling, no tears, no explanations. Because she knew any word she said now would be twisted. But her silence would echo. The sound of leather shoes striking the cabin floor landed like a drumbeat. From the front of the aircraft entered a tall man in a dark suit, matching tie, and a pin on his left lapel. Mitchell Crane, Regional Aviation Operations Manager. Clara stepped toward him like someone who had just been reinforced. She leaned in, whispered a few brief lines. Mitchell nodded, his gaze heavy as stone. He turned toward Noelle, still seated upright in seat 1A. "Ma'am?" he began, trying to keep his tone civil. "I'm the operations lead at this airport. I've been informed that you're occupying a seat not assigned to you and are delaying the aircraft's departure." Noelle's expression didn't change. "Hello, sir. My name is Noelle Bryant. I purchased this seat. I have confirmation in my email and can show you right now." Mitchell didn't bother looking at her phone screen. He shook his head. "We'll verify that later, but for now, I need you to step off the aircraft so as not to inconvenience other passengers." From across the aisle, Sylvia chimed in, perfectly timed. "Sir, I've reserved seat 1A for months. I fly this route every month. She clearly doesn't belong here." Mitchell turned slightly and gave her a familiar nod, the kind reserved for minor but delicate situations. Then he turned back, lowering his voice but sharpening the edge. "If you don't cooperate, the airline reserves the right to permanently deny you service. And trust me, you do not want this incident making the news." Noelle tilted her head slightly, her gaze as straight and sharp as a laser. "It already made the news the moment you walked into this cabin." Mitchell blinked, confused. But Jalen, from seat 3C, understood perfectly. His camera was still recording, unblinking, continuous. He knew Mitchell's type, polite when necessary, authoritative when possible. But when challenged, they always forgot other people had the right to record too. And in that moment, the truth had been present long enough to speak for itself. Sylvia stood up from seat 1C with the air of someone who believed power was stored in her handbag. Her small clutch opened with the ease of a rehearsed gesture. Inside, a thick cream-colored envelope, unmarked, unsealed, but understood. Someone like Mitchell didn't need instructions. She handed it to him the way someone would pass over a vegetarian meal request. No words, just eye contact, a silent, inherited contract of privilege and complicity. Mitchell took the envelope without hesitation. His fingers grazed the surface, weighing the contents. He nodded. Again. No words. But the decision had been made. "You'll have to leave the aircraft," Mitchell repeated to Noelle. This time, with all traces of courtesy gone, immediately. Noelle looked at him, unblinking. "I just witnessed a bribe take place on this aircraft. Do you want me to say it aloud?" Mitchell scoffed. His eyes darted to her wrist where the black, unremarkable smartwatch rested. "You think that little gadget gets you into first class? Keep dreaming." In row 3, Jalen held his breath. The lens was still rolling, but now he zoomed in. He'd seen the envelope, seen Sylvia's hand, seen the way Mitchell tucked it between two folders like it was just another briefing. He had captured everything. And most importantly, he knew what to do next. Jalen tilted his phone, opened the auto-sync app. With a single tap, the footage would upload to a secure, encrypted drive. Just in case someone later tried to delete it. Because if there's one thing Jalen had learned from his mother, a woman falsely accused of shoplifting just for standing too long in an aisle, it's this evidence must be stored before they try to erase it. And Mitchell, he thought the matter was handled. He didn't know that in just a few seconds, his own voice would echo through the cabin. The confrontation hadn't even escalated yet when the overhead PA system clicked on. Beep. A faint static noise like someone had accidentally brushed a microphone. All heads turned. Clara snapped toward the cockpit area, eyes narrowing. "Who's adjusting the audio? Was that intentional?" No one answered. And then, Mitchell's voice, unmistakable, came over the speakers. "She'll be off in no time. Don't worry. Seat 1A will be ready for you like always." A dead silence swept the cabin. Then that same voice, clipped, clear, unapologetic. "This isn't about a ticket. It's about image. We can't have someone like her sitting there." Sylvia froze. Mitchell whipped around. What is this?" Clara rushed to the audio control panel, hands trembling. "Did the cockpit patch in by mistake? Can someone please shut this off?" But no one touched the system. No pilot made a call. No one accidentally pressed play. The recording kept going as if it had been cued perfectly for this moment. "If we don't remove her, our loyal flyers will complain. I'll take care of it." "Understood." Passengers looked around. A woman in row 4 covered her mouth. A man whispered, "Oh my God." They really said that. Jalen, steady as ever, said nothing. He simply panned the lens toward Noelle. She hadn't moved, hadn't smiled, hadn't raised an eyebrow, hadn't blinked. She just sat there as if she'd always known this moment would come. Mitchell moved toward the control panel, but Clara stopped him. "No. If you interfere now, they'll know. Let me call tech." But it was already too late. At the back of the cabin, someone removed their headphones. A little girl turned to her mother. "Mom, why are they trying to kick her off? Is it because she's black?" No one answered. Because by now, the truth had spoken. And it needed no translation. "She'll be off this plane any minute now." The voice still echoed through the speakers, looping, "Cold." No one was speaking anymore. No one pretended to look out the window. First class sat in silence, not because someone had died, but because a collective illusion had just crumbled. Flight attendant Clara stood frozen at the front of the cabin, eyes wide. Sylvia clutched her handbag tightly, as if trying to pack up the privilege that had just slipped through her fingers. Mitchell was turning red, his mouth opening and closing, fumbling for an excuse to deny the words that had just undeniably come from his own lips. A man in row 2 leaned toward his wife. "I thought this stuff only happened online. Never imagined I'd see such blatant discrimination in real life." His wife murmured, "And this time, there's no denying it." A few rows back, a businesswoman held up her tablet, filming the entire cabin. A teenager had gone live. A mother pulled her daughter close, her eyes filled not with fear of Noelle, but of the system she once trusted. No one shouted, no one made a scene. Just a dense silence, like fog settling over the entire cabin. And then, an unspoken truth began to spread. "I've seen this before." And I stayed silent. The outrage hadn't erupted yet, but the conscience of the entire cabin was starting to crack. The speakers clicked off. Silence at last. But what had played could never be undone, and everyone in that cabin knew it. Mitchell swallowed hard. Clara looked at him, whispered, "We have to handle this now. If this hits the internet." Mitchell snapped, "No one's recording." A male voice rang out from the middle rows. "Oh, I've been recording since minute 2, and if necessary, I'll replay the part where you tried to silence a paying passenger." Mitchell spun around, eyes wide. The man's voice was cold metallic. "I'm an attorney, and this is a public setting. You are not allowed to intimidate someone facing discrimination, especially when all the evidence has been documented." Noelle still hadn't spoken. She didn't need to. She'd let them listen to their own voices. Even after the recording stopped, the cabin's atmosphere hadn't returned to normal. Because now, everyone understood the truth didn't just exist. It had been recorded, distributed, and duplicated. Mitchell exhaled sharply, trying to recover his professional tone. "This can be explained. Someone clearly hacked the cabin system." Noelle lifted her head. For the first time since the ordeal began, she spoke. "No one hacked anything," she said, her voice steady and clear, just loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. "The PA system is already linked to the operations center, and I'm the one who designed that software." Clara furrowed her brow, confused. "You designed it?" Noelle nodded calmly. I lead the development team for the passenger and crew behavior monitoring system, the one this airline contracted last year. Mitchell clenched his fist. You're threatening the airline. No, Noelle replied. I'm following protocol. The one approved by this very company for cases of severe discrimination and staff non-compliance. She raised her wrist gently. The small, black, silent smartwatch gleamed under the cabin lights. This device is gesture-activated. Once triggered, it records, encrypts, and sends data to 3 separate servers. One of those is for the press. Sylvia went pale. A passenger behind them gasped, The press. You mean, what we just heard, is being sent out. Noelle turned slightly, her voice calm. No. What you heard was just a small portion. The rest, including video, internal emails, and HR data logs, was sent the moment Mitchell entered the cabin. A soft clap emerged from row 4. Another passenger turned to their seatmate and said, She didn't just board the plane, she boarded the system. Noelle leaned back into her seat as if she'd just answered a question during a presentation. And in truth, she had, because the entire cabin was now one giant classroom, and the lesson of the day was this. Silence from a black woman does not mean submission. Mitchell leaned toward Noelle, no longer the composed manager. His voice trembled with tension. You've just violated airline policy, unauthorized recording, unauthorized distribution. As a representative of this airline, I hereby declare you banned from flying with us permanently. A faint rose from the back rows, not because the threat shocked anyone, but because it was so familiar. It sounded exactly like every moment when a broken system tried to flip the script once it could no longer deny the truth. Noelle didn't flinch. She slowly lowered her hand before replying as if she were carefully selecting the terms of a contract. Mr. Mitchell, she said, clearly and slowly. I'm not just a passenger. She leaned forward, just enough for the cabin lights to catch the small logo stitched onto her collar, TTI Technologies. My company TechTrack Innovations operates 47% of this airline's data and reservation systems. From seat maps to baggage routing tools, from crew scheduling software to internal compliance audits. Sylvia's jaw dropped. And today, Noelle continued, I just sent an emergency email to the airline's board of directors. Subject line, Immediate termination of contract clause activated. Mitchell's eyes widened. He took a step back, as if someone had just pushed him off his pedestal. You don't have the authority. I do, Noelle interrupted. The contract permits immediate termination if the system is misused, especially in cases involving human rights violations or racial bias. A silent ripple swept through the cabin. A man whispered. She didn't just sit in 1A, she's shutting down the airline. Mitchell clenched his jaw and turned to Clara. Get legal on the line, now. Clara just stared at him. No nod, no word. Because now, she knew the plane she worked on was sinking, and the woman in seat 1A was the only one holding a life raft. Noelle leaned back ever so slightly. You said I was banned from flying, she said softly, almost like a confession. But I don't need a ticket to board a plane. I wrote the software it runs on. 9:12 a.m., New York time, Skylinks Airlines headquarters, 27th floor. Inside the emergency boardroom, frosted glass, a 10-meter-long walnut table, there wasn't a single empty seat. 8 executive board members, 2 in-house lawyers, 1 public relations officer, and CEO Warren Keating. All silent. Not because they had nothing to say, but because of the video playing on the large screen. Mitchell's voice echoed through the speakers. This isn't about the ticket. It's about the image. We don't let people like her sit there. A few winced. A middle-aged woman bowed her head, fingers clenched tightly together. The lead counsel took a long, deep breath. Keating sat with his hands clasped on the table, face as cold as a winter frost. How many views, he asked. The head of communications answered over 4.2 million in just 8 hours. And, rising by the minute, the hashtag that our Seat for Power is trending in the national top 5. An assistant pushed the door slightly open and handed Keating a tablet. Special coverage from the 3 major news networks. They're calling it the 1A incident. Keating scrolled rapidly. A post from a state senator. A statement from a civil rights coalition. A status update from a competing airline. "And what have we said in response?" he asked, voice tight like piano wire. "We can't issue an official statement yet," said the legal rep. "We're still verifying identities. So far, we know the removed passenger's name is Noelle Bryant." Keating nodded, eyes still fixed on the screen. Then he spoke slowly, as if asking himself, "Why does that name sound so familiar?" Still in the 27th floor boardroom. The paused video showed the final frame, Noelle Bryant, hand resting on her smartwatch, gaze unshaken. The head of HR typed quickly into her laptop, accessing the internal database. Bryant, here it is." She stopped, staring at a profile bearing the TTI Technologies logo. "A year ago, we signed a contract with a tech firm that handles our reservation infrastructure, passenger behavior analytics, and cybersecurity for Skylinks. Primary contact on the contract, Noelle A. Bryant, CEO of TTI." Silence. No one moved. Then Keating spoke again, each word seeming to press against his throat. "You're telling me the woman kicked out of seat 1A this morning is the CEO of the company running our airline's core software?" The head of IT nodded slowly. "And she's also the one who proposed the crew behavior monitoring protocol, the one we just updated last month. The same protocol that played the audio clip." "Yes." One of the legal team lifted his head, voice uneasy. "That means she has the authority to activate the alert system, record internally, and transmit data externally without company approval, per the customer protection clause in the contract." Keating leaned fully back in his chair, fingers interlocked. "We signed a tool meant to catch bias, and then enacted bias right in front of its creator." The head of comms exhaled. "She wasn't removed from the system. She built it." No one spoke. A new notification appeared on the screen at the end of the room. "New attachment liability index from TTI Legal, subject systemic accountability." The attachment name was Simple Liability Index, PDF. No all caps, no dramatic footnotes, but everyone knew this wasn't a technical brief. This was what CEOs call a data bomb. Keating opened the file on the main screen. Page 1, a spreadsheet with over 50 rows. Title list of passenger downgrades without clear cause, sorted by appearance. First column, passenger name. Second, physical description. Third, internal comments, hidden from customers. Fourth, approval notes. Final column, authorized by M. Crane, I. E. Mitchell. The head legal counsel muttered, "Dear God." Keating turned to the next page. Screenshots of internal crew emails. One section, highlighted in yellow. "That girl doesn't look like a business type. If needed, blame a technical glitch and move her to economy." Next page. Cabin surveillance footage, unofficial angle but clear faces. Clara Maddox smiling while tearing a ticket. Mitchell accepting an envelope. Sylvia nodding in approval. No commentary needed. The truth was speaking for itself. Then, copies of 12 passenger complaints from black travelers over the past 6 months, all marked internal use only. Never forwarded to customer service. The head of legal whispered through clenched teeth. "This isn't an isolated act. This is a network." And it was recorded, stored, encrypted, and sent by the person who built the system. Keating tapped his fingers on the table. Soft, slow, a judgmental rhythm. "This is how she responded to having her ticket torn up," he asked. No one replied. "No," he answered himself. "This is how she teaches a system that thinks it's invisible, that it was never unseen." 10:41 a.m. main lobby. Skylinks headquarters, white marble floors, polished steel columns, overhead clocks showing 6 time zones. People moved briskly. Receptionists whispered to one another. Then, the glass doors slid open. Noelle Bryant walked in. No assistant, no cameras, no media. Just a simple charcoal gray suit, a phone in her hand, and a gaze that didn't waver. She didn't need an introduction. She didn't need an escort. She didn't need an invitation. A receptionist sprang to her feet. "Ma'am, are you—" Noelle paused just briefly, sliding her phone into her coat pocket. "Tell Mr. Keating I arrived earlier than expected, and I've brought nothing that wasn't already outlined in the contract." The receptionist nodded rapidly, trembling as she dialed the internal line. In under 60 seconds, a senior aide arrived. "Please, this way, ma'am." Noelle didn't rush. She walked with an even rhythm, no high heels clicking, no waves, no greetings. She simply crossed the lobby like someone who'd been here before, and this time, would not leave empty-handed. The elevator doors opened. She rode to the 27th floor. The doors parted. The boardroom was unchanged, men in suits, women clutching iPads, eyes trained to assess and strategize but never apologize. CEO Warren Keating stood up first, but before he could speak, Noelle raised a hand gently. "No ceremony. I'm not here for an apology. I'm here to set terms. If they're rejected, the airline's entire system will go offline within 6 hours." No one objected. No one interrupted. Because by now, everyone in that room knew she had the capability to do exactly that, and more importantly, she had the justification. The tension in the 27th floor boardroom was thick as fog, not because of pressure, but because every mask had fallen. Noelle opened the folder in her hand. She didn't sit. On the cover, 3 short lines printed in white over black. Clara Maddox, ethics violation in service conduct. Mitchell Crane, abuse of power. Internal misrepresentation. Sylvia Westmore, bribery of operational staff. She placed the file at the center of the table. These 3 must have their contracts terminated today. No negotiations, no departmental transfers. Keating inhaled deeply. "We'll have to review." Noelle tilted her head slightly. "You've been reviewing for years. I've been recording for the past 48 hours. A few board members nodded faintly. One whispered to an aide. No one objected. They were calculating consequences now, not exits. Noelle continued. Second condition. The airline will release full data on racial discrimination complaints from the past 5 years, including all suppressed, altered, or internal-only records. A female manager near the end of the table asked quietly, "Will you release it together with the airline or send it to the press?" Noelle didn't answer right away. She simply looked at the woman, a look that reminded everyone. She had chosen not to release everything, but if pushed, she knew exactly how. Then she said, "Third, the airline will establish a passenger equity council composed of at least 50% people of color, immigrants, and representatives from historically marginalized communities. This council will have authority over service policy review, staff disciplinary decisions, and customer grievance resolutions." Keating parted his lips. "You're asking for something that doesn't exist in this industry." Noelle nodded. "Exactly." Someone in the room chuckled, not with sarcasm, but recognition. A nod to someone asking for what they themselves only dared to print on a brochure. "Anything else?" Keating asked, voice low. Noelle placed a second file on the table. "There's more, but this one isn't a demand, it's an opportunity." She opened the second folder. The first page bore only one line, clearly printed. Equi-Air, a real-time passenger fairness monitoring system, powered by TTI Technologies. Noelle didn't glance around. She didn't need theatrics. She spoke like someone who'd pitched this proposal hundreds of times, but for the first time, the room had to listen. Equi-Air is an AI-driven platform that tracks how passengers are treated from check-in to disembarkation. A board member asked, measured by what customer feedback? Noelle shook her head. By actual behavior language, tone, service speed, upgrade decisions, seat cancellations, complaint response times, all encrypted, all privacy safe, but enough to detect systemic bias patterns. Keating asked slowly. "You're proposing we implement this system here?" Noelle lifted her gaze. "No, I'm rolling it out across the entire industry. Skylinks can choose to be the first airline to integrate Equi-Air and lead the transparency movement. Or stand outside and be the first airline it monitors." The room fell silent. A female HR director asked, Have you already signed others on? Noelle nodded. One Gulf region airline, one domestic African carrier, and a California-based startup preparing to rebrand after a lawsuit. They understand fairness is no longer just an ethic, it's a competitive edge. Keating leaned back in his chair. He knew he wasn't just staring at a PR crisis. He was staring at the new architecture of trust. Noelle closed the file. Power doesn't lie in seat 1A. It lies in how you respond when someone gets pushed out of it. Skylinks has two options: sign the memorandum of collaboration with Equiair, or face every next action under public light. 3 months later, the Skylinks logo still appeared on the tail of the aircraft, but inside, everything had changed. A new recruitment protocol. All flight attendants and regional managers retrained. The Equiair system integrated into internal operations, and a message printed directly onto every employee badge. We don't serve seats. We serve people. Not everyone believed in the change at first. Many employees thought, it's just a PR campaign. But then they began to notice small things, very small but impossible to ignore. A black passenger in a hoodie was offered a free coffee after a flight delay. An immigrant mother was given a live translator at the check-in desk without being dismissed. A flight attendant was suspended immediately after calling a guest unfit for premium class. The story began circulating in early morning briefings. There was a woman once. She had her first-class ticket ripped. She didn't scream. She recorded, and then the whole airline changed. In crew lounges, they said they're not afraid of being watched. They're afraid of facing themselves. Staff performance reviews no longer rated just response time or service volume. A new category had appeared: equity impact. A category no one had thought necessary before. A category proposed by Noelle. Those who once stayed silent as someone was dragged from their seat were now the first to stand when something felt wrong. Not because of pressure, but because values had shifted. No, everything wasn't perfect, but doing the right thing was no longer seen as a privilege or an exception. It had been re-engineered into the standard. And someone in the system quietly said fairness never died. It just needed a chance to live again in every process, in every small act. His name, officially listed now, was Jalen Reese, Director of Passenger Equity Communications, Skylinks Airlines. A new title, a new office, but no polished oak desk. Just a wide screen showing real-time passenger feedback, and an old notebook he'd carried since freshman year. Inside that notebook, the very first line he wrote as a communications student: I don't want to record injustice. I want to help others not have to live with it. 3 months ago, Jalen sat in row 3, hands trembling as he filmed Noelle being denied her first-class seat. Now, he was the one helping rebuild the equity code for the same airline that tried to erase her from the cabin. It wasn't easy. Some days, he spent 3 hours debating with training teams, explaining why tone of voice could carry bias. Other days, he received anonymous emails from staff like this one. For the first time in 14 years, I feel this company genuinely wants to change. Thank you for recording. He read that email 3 times, not out of sentiment but because he realized. Not everyone resists the truth. Some just need a reason to stand with it. Jalen hosted a talk for new hires in aviation. No slides, no digital boards, just one question. What will you do when you see someone being mistreated? And you could intervene. There's no single right answer, only a choice. And now, this company officially recognizes those who choose right. Along the hallway leading to the boarding gates, a new poster was mounted. Safety isn't just machinery. It's knowing the person next to you matters just as much as you do. Below that, in smaller print, monitored by Equiair Transparency from Within, in partnership with Jalen Reese. He didn't want his name in bold. He just wanted people to remember. Fairness doesn't need to be loud. It just needs not to be forgotten. Noelle Bryant had no office at Skylinks HQ, no board seat, no strategic advisor or innovation pioneer title. She turned them all down. Instead, she appeared at a small airport in Atlanta where there were fewer cameras, but more dreams still grounded. On the departure screen, one flight stood out: Flight EQ-01, the inaugural scholarship journey of the Fly Forward program. Its mission to fund international airfare and orientation for black students who had never left the country. Anonymous sponsor N.A. Bryant Foundation. No press conference, no hashtags, just 24 students in white t-shirts, holding passports for the first time. A 16-year-old girl tiptoed up and asked Noelle, "Are you flying with us?" "Ma'am." Noelle smiled. "No. I've flown this path already. Now it's your turn to chart a new one." Flight EQ-01 rolled gently down the runway. Noelle stood still, wind tugging at her coat. No interviews. No one called her name. She just watched as the children took their rightful seats without being doubted. A media staffer approached and whispered, "Would you like us to record something for the broadcast?" Noelle smiled softly. "There's no need to record anything. If they need the story, it's already in every action. If they need the name, well, there's an entire generation now writing it forward." The plane lifted from the ground as lightly as a promise kept. No applause, none needed, because some victories aren't measured in claps, but in the quiet they leave behind, a quiet that isn't pain but the sound of justice finally being in its place. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Every click helps us bring more powerful stories of empathy, justice, and silent strength to life. Your support is what fuels this journey. Let's keep standing together and rising higher, one story at a time. Stay safe and inspired.